Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, today we're going to dig into something fascinating, a cultural moment you might have seen pop up online. Trust us, though, there's way more going on beneath the surface. We're looking at the unexpected chaos around Cracker Barrel changing its logo recently. Yeah, we've gone through a pile of stuff, articles, some pretty deep research, our own notes, all trying to make sense of what some folks are calling this tragic comedy of a rebrand. So our mission really is to unpack how this seemingly small thing, a logo tweak, just blew up. We're talking social media firestorm, a surprisingly intense cultural debate, even hitting their stock price. It tells you a lot, actually, about things like tradition, marketing, and, well, just how the internet works these days. All right, let's really get into this. Picture it. A logo change, right? Something you probably never gave a second thought to. And suddenly it's part of why a company's market value drops by almost $100 million. I mean, what is going on there? Why this logo? Why now?
It's uh it really is a perfect storm, isn't it? It shows how tangled up a brand's identity gets with how people see it, even the bits we think we ignore. What's so striking is just the sheer volume of the reaction, for what many would just see as a cosmetic update. It kind of underscores that brands, especially these older ones, the ones with history, they build up this sort of psychological understanding with us, their customers. And the visuals, that's a huge part of that deal.
That's a really good way to put it. And, to really get this whole Cracker Barrel thing, we kind of need to zoom out first. Because this isn't just happening to them, right? It's part of the bigger story, a tougher one, playing out across a lot of these traditional restaurant chains, these like legacy places. They're facing some serious headwinds. Sales dipping, the economy. Yeah.
And look, their main customer base is, well, one of our sources put it pretty bluntly. They said it's literally dying off one funeral at a time.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's stark, but it reflects a real pressure they're under.
And the research keeps pointing to this problem across the board. Stale branding and menus so outdated, they might as well come with an AARP discount card automatically applied. That's another quote. And Cracker Barrel. A lot of people see them as like the poster child for this exact struggle. You walk in and it feels like you've stepped back in time, doesn't it? To when healthy meant maybe only half a stick of butter in your biscuits. It's that kind of ingrained traditional thing.
Absolutely, that deep-seated vibe.
So they had this old logo, right? For almost 50 years, since 77, super recognizable. It had the picture, Uncle Herschel sitting by a Cracker Barrel. Famous story, designed by Bill Hawley, Nashville artist, supposedly on a napkin. And it was meant to stand for all that stuff. Nostalgia, comfort, Southern hospitality. You know the drill. But here's where it gets really interesting, like you were saying earlier. Our sources called this thing a sacred symbol that, get this, most customers barely noticed until someone changed it. What does that tell us?
It tells us a whole lot, actually. If you look at the industry, this whole situation really highlights what we sometimes call the tradition trap. It's where the thing that made you strong, your history, your identity, suddenly becomes, kind of ironically, your biggest hurdle for the future. For Cracker Barrel, Uncle Herschel and that barrel, it's not just a drawing. They're like these powerful symbols, even if we don't consciously think about them. They tap right into that feeling of nostalgia, of comfort, the past, these visual cues. They get embedded so deeply, They become part of that psychological contract we talked about, often just sitting there dormant until, boom, something shakes it up.
Right, okay. So you've got this deep, maybe subconscious connection. And then comes the crime, as some reports cheekily called it. August 2025, Cracker Barrel rolls out the new look, part of this All the More campaign. And visually, yeah, it's very minimalist, modern, looks kind of like a lot of other corporate rebrands we've seen in the past 10 years or so.
Very familiar territory for modern branding, yeah.
And the evidence, if you will, shows what they took out. Uncle Herschel, gone. The barrel, gone. Even the words old country store, gone. They basically wiped away the main things that made it distinct,
Stripped it back.
Yeah. Their alibi, maybe, was keeping the colors that classic brown and golden yellow, almost like they thought, okay, keep the gravy and cornbread colors and everyone will be fine.
A bit of a visual anchor, perhaps they hoped.
And this wasn't just a logo. It was tied into remodeling stores, updating menus, trying to freshen things up. But there's a real tension there, isn't there? Like, sleek modernism doesn't exactly scream authentic country cooking.
No, it creates a bit of cognitive dissonance, maybe.
So the big question everyone's asking is why? Why change? And the business reason from CEO Julie Felss Masino was pretty direct. She said, we need people to choose us today and tomorrow. Simple as that. The goal, based on our research, seems to be about attracting younger customers, people who've maybe never seen a real Cracker Barrel and think farmhouse style is just an aisle at Target. But can you actually do that? Modernize without gutting what people loved.
That really is the core challenge, the million-dollar question for these legacy brands. And connecting this back, it's obvious this wasn't just some, random whim. It was strategic. It was a gamble, absolutely, but one driven by those very real market pressures, the competition, the changing tastes. They have to stay relevant. They're trying to walk this incredibly fine line update enough for new folks, but don't tick off the loyal ones who got you here. And that's exactly what we call reinvention roulette. It's this kind of desperate play sometimes. Brands overhaul their identity, hoping for new blood, but often they just end up pushing away the base they already had. It really forces the question, can you modernize a brand built purely on nostalgia without just tearing out its soul?
Well, if you asked the internet, the answer was a loud, very angry no. The reaction was, wow, immediate and intense. A full-on social media meltdown, as the reports called it. Places like Twitter or X now just lit up. People calling the rebrand cold, soulless, even brand suicide. And not just from hardcore fans. We're talking about people who, eat there twice a year when visiting grandma. That quote kind of sums it up.
The reach of the outrage was broad.
It even got into petition politics. A change.org petition popped up demanding the old logo back. Ironically, as one source pointed out, they were fighting for a fictional old man on a barrel, which, when you step back...
yeah, the irony is thick there.
And what's really interesting, or maybe predictable these days, is how it got sucked into the culture wars. Our sources talked about culture war conscription, where some conservative voices started framing it as wokeness. Because, the analysis was removing an old white man from anything is now a political statement. And look, just so we're crystal clear for you listening, we're simply reporting what the sources in the commentary discussed here. We're not taking sides, just observing how the conversation played out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's crucial to just note that this became part of the narrative.
And it wasn't just noise online. There was real, tangible financial fallout. The company's stock value dropped by nearly $100 million right after the announcement, which prompted one source to joke, it proves investors are just as emotionally unstable as Twitter users. Maybe a bit harsh, but...
It definitely shows a strong market reaction, regardless of the comparison.
So the internet's response, summed up. The internet, where proportional responses go to die. The feeling was basically, how dare they change a logo I never thought about until yesterday? It's quite something, isn't it?
It really is. And it's fascinating psychologically how a change like this, seemingly minor, can hit such a deep collective nerve. It really speaks volumes about how brands weave themselves into our lives, our culture, our memories. Even if you weren't actively thinking about that logo every day, it was there. It was part of that subconscious nostalgic link. And when you mess with that, people feel it almost personally, like a broken promise. This also really throws a spotlight on what some call the outrage economy online, where the loudest, angriest reactions get amplified the most. It can create this impression of universal fury, even if it's really just a very passionate minority driving things, which poses a tough question for any company facing this. Is that loud voice actually your average customer, or is it just a vocal few shaping the story?
That's such a critical point for anyone in branding or comms today. Okay, so facing this firestorm, the CEO, Julie Felss Masino, she responds. She says things like, we're honoring our legacy while evolving for relevance, and insists the Herschel way is still central to their culture. Standard corporate talk, maybe?
Trying to bridge the gap, yeah. Reassure people.
One source had a pretty funny translation of this, basically saying it meant, please stop tweeting death threats over a logo change. Uncle Herschel isn't real and never was. Which, again, may be a bit cynical, but...
Captures a certain frustration, perhaps.
The CEO also talked about focusing on fresh energy, thoughtful craftsmanship, heartfelt hospitality. And again, our sources kind of read between the lines, describing that as corporate speak for, we're still going to serve you the same calorie bombs, just in prettier buildings.
Oh, shit. But it reflects the skepticism some people had.
The company also pushed back, saying the remodeled stores are lighter, brighter, more welcoming. Which, you gotta admit, kind of implies that maybe the problem was the lighting, not the food. It just feels like a really tricky balancing act they're attempting.
Oh, incredibly tricky. And it circles right back to that identity crisis we see with so many established brands. It's that point where, under pressure to change, sometimes even the leaders seem unsure exactly what the brand is anymore. Cracker Barrel's gamble here is pretty stark. They feel they have to modernize, or they risk, becoming the restaurant equivalent of a museum exhibit that nobody visits except on school field trips. That's a harsh assessment from one source, but it highlights the fear.
Yeah, the fear of becoming irrelevant.
Exactly. And the CEO's response, while trying to balance tradition and the future,
also touches on this common issue we sometimes call corporate cowardice. It's not necessarily cowardice, but it's that paralysis, that fear-driven reaction where companies get stuck. They either fold completely to the loudest critics, or they double down with responses that sound kind of tone-deaf, just hoping it all blows over. Finding that perfect pitch between respecting where you came from and boldly stepping into the future. That's incredibly hard.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what are the big lessons here from this whole Cracker Barrel thing? The power and maybe the danger of rebranding seems pretty clear. We definitely saw that deep, almost subconscious emotional attachment people have, even, like the sources said, when they couldn't draw the logo if their lives depended on it. Amazing.
That latent connection.
And we definitely saw the power of media amplification, how news outlets can jump on something like a logo change and treat it like this huge international crisis, probably because, rage drives clicks.
That's certainly part of the modern media landscape, yeah. But what's also fascinating here, beyond the immediate fallout, is just the sheer amount of talk this generated. Think about it. A restaurant chain that was maybe struggling financially, maybe not top of mind for many, suddenly they're everywhere, every headline.
Free marketing,
Yeah.
even if it's negative.
Well, that's the debate, isn't it? And our sources found some really funny ironies in how people actually behaved versus how they talked online. Like you had conservatives furious about a logo change who apparently still visit because boycotts are for the left.
Yeah.
And they're posting these angry videos from the Cracker Barrel parking lot.
You can't make this stuff up.
Right. And then on the other side, you had progressives mocking the outrage, but they admit they never actually eat there anyway, so they're contributing zero to sales either way.
So the online battle doesn't always match reality?
Often doesn't. It paints this picture of online debate versus real-world action being quite different. So yeah, maybe a short-term hit to the stock, maybe some angry tweets. But could this whole mess ironically end up being a long-term publicity goldmine? As one source provocatively put it at the end, maybe there's no such thing as bad publicity when you sell mediocre food at premium prices. A cynical take, but makes you think.
Wow. That really does put a different spin on it. The layers here just keep peeling back. So for you listening, what does this all mean? Whether you're, building a brand yourself or just watching the markets or trying to make sense of these crazy cultural conversations we seem to have all the time, maybe this whole Cracker Barrel debate just shows us something about change. That in this era where everything feels like it's constantly shifting, sometimes the things people fight hardest for are the very things they didn't even realize they cared about until they were gone. And maybe, just maybe, sometimes a little bit of outrage ends up being the most effective, if unintentional, marketing strategy you could ask for. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.